Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Radam Egberto Will is your host. Thank you so kindly for being here. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Hey, Michael Rudner. Somehow I knew the first message that Senor Rudnin was going to put out there was House of Representatives just passed a marijuana decriminalization bill. My guess when it hits the Senate, it won't hit the Senate. But we'll have to talk about that later on. We are going to have to put a push for that legalization of marijuana. To put it bluntly, I believe in the legalization of everything, and then the taxes that we collect on those things, we mitigate whatever problems. Welcome, AVQ, Bridge MCP. ¿Cómo están todos mis amigos, mis hermanos? Nuestro pasi. Everybody, welcome aboard. We're going to have a great show for you today. Things are still a bit crazy, but they will get better. They will get better slowly, but there is no time to waste, and we are going to have to continue doing our job. We're going to have to continue informing people. We're going to have to continue doing all these things because you know what, man? The kind of stuff that is raining right now, it's crazy. We have people that are indoctrinated. We have people that are in a cultish mentality. And the only way we're going to solve that kind of problem is starting to reinstitute trust between people, that which was damaged by every one of these plutocratic type organizations intent of putting us against each other. Squeedo. That's an interesting name, Squeedo on YouTube. Welcome aboard. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about what the program is going to be today. We have a great guest today, but let's go and start with the problem. Hello, Squeedo. And Breed says, ha, ha, ha. And of course, there's Paul Fleming checking in from Atlanta, the great ATL, the center of gravity of what's going to happen on January 5th when Democrats bring two Democratic senators from Georgia into the Senate, making it a 50-50 Senate where the honorable Vice President Kamala Harris will be tiebreakers on issues, hoping that our West Virginia senator doesn't misbehave as he's used to. But you know what? We have a website here called Failed Democrats that's just waiting for any one of these Democrats to fail. And if they do, we will be ready for them. Anyhow, folks, let's get busy. Title of the show today on the screen. Stephanie J. Miller talks about zero waste living. Katie Porter strikes again, red country masks, stupidity, and more. Stephanie Miller discusses how we can all reduce waste. And I think it's important. Katie Porter exposes Steven Mnuchin. David Brooks describes red country's fragility. Michael Rudnin says, Egberto, you are optimistic. I predict Georgia will go 1-1, giving Republicans a 51 majority in the Senate. I don't think Georgia can go 1-1. I think that's my humble opinion. I think if it goes, it goes, and the person that is likely, look, a lot of people in the South still have this patriarchal intent, right? That's why I think if you take a look at it, you see that the woman, I don't remember her name right now, is not doing as well as the guy. But I think we break that. I think she loses by a larger margin than the guy, but I think they both go down if and only if we make it an existential issue. The reason McConnell is running to the table right now, it's not only this unemployment report, but it's not only, it's everybody that's suffering right now. This suffering doesn't know Republican or Democratic suffering. Everybody's suffering. And McConnell knows that if he seems to be the one blocking everything and he's keeping all Republicans in check, when you go make the case and says, look, Georgians, these guys are stopping you from getting $1,200 in your pocket, which McConnell is doing right now. I have a feeling the $1,200 is coming. McConnell is out there saying, we're not going to give the $1,200. We only want $500 billion. And the rest of the Republicans say, no, we may have to do more. And the truth of the matter is, McConnell may end up doing a lot more than we expected McConnell to do Because after this stimulus bill passes, which it will, before the 5th of January, if it doesn't help average Joe Blow, and Joe Blow, whether in a trailer park, on the tip of Appalachia, or anywhere, when they know that it is those two senators that will prevent them from getting $1,200, you want to bet how many of them won't tell anybody what they're going to do, but they're going to go vote for the young kid, the young Jewish kid, and the older black preacher? Mark my words. I think Democrats, I don't know what kind of ads they're, maybe our ATL guy can tell us. I don't know what kind of ads Democrats are doing, Paul. I don't know what kind of ads they're doing in Georgia. But they should make it an economic issue, rural and urban. Rural, urban, and suburban, an economic issue. That's all they need to do. They don't want you to survive. That's all they need to do. Anyhow, let's start with our first video. We should get $3,000. We should get more than $3,000 if you calculate the amount of trillions that went over out of our wealth to the plutocracy. There's much more there, and I'm not talking about like, oh, just free giveaway or whatever. No, I'm talking about this is the time where we start talking about basal income. What is it called? Base income, whatever that's called. That is where we talk. Chris Marco, welcome aboard. They are doing more for the airlines instead of the people. That's what they do. That is what they do, Chris. And that is what we've got to mitigate. Anyhow, let's go ahead and listen to the first one here. The first video. Katie Porter, check this out.
Steve Mnuchin demonstrated two things today: his ignorance of governing policy and his laziness in preparing for a confrontation with Katie Porter. Congressman Porter made the point to Mnuchin that it is illegal for him to move $455 billion away from the COVID relief effort until at least 5 years from now, on January 1st, 2026.
Secretary Mnuchin, is it currently the year 2026? Yes or no?
First, let me comment. I do believe there's an economic emergency. You're putting words in my mouth that are not correct. Second of all, okay, the answer is that 4027.
The time belongs to the gentle lady.
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Mnuchin, would you start by answering my first question, and I will ask you others. Is today the year 2026? Yes or no?
Of course it's not 2026. How ridiculous to ask me that question and waste our time.
Well, Secretary Mnuchin, I think it's ridiculous that you're play acting to be a lawyer when you have
actually, I have plenty of lawyers at the Department of Treasury who advise me, so I'm more than happy to follow up with Chair Waters and explain all the legal provisions and the ranking member. So more than happy to make that access.
Secretary Mnuchin, are you in fact a lawyer?
I do not have a legal degree. I have lawyers that report to me.
Thank you. Chair Powell, are you in fact a lawyer?
I am a former lawyer, a recovering lawyer.
You have a legal degree, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, Secretary Mnuchin, you're trying to tell Chairman Powell to send over any remaining funds right now, and you're claiming, falsely in my opinion, that that is what the law says. And you've gotten into a disagreement with someone who's actually a lawyer.
Are you a lawyer?
Are you a lawyer? There are millions of people listening to me right now who know that Katie Porter is a lawyer, who know Katie Porter went to Harvard Law School, where Elizabeth Warren was one of her professors, and the lazy mind of Steve Mnuchin doesn't even know that. And the breathtakingly lazy staff that surrounds Steve Mnuchin don't know that or didn't tell him that, and were incapable of preparing him in any way for the utter humiliation he suffered today while testifying to the Honorable Katie Porter. Elizabeth Warren answered Steve Mnuchin's ridiculous question on Twitter. I've known Katie Porter since she was a law student in my bankruptcy class 20 years ago. To answer your snotty question, Secretary Mnuchin, not only is Representative Porter a lawyer, she can run circles around you and any of your legally questionable and morally bankrupt policy failures. And
I wanted to show this piece for one reason and one reason only. It is important for people to realize that what the Trump administration is doing is trying to cripple the Biden administration and in the process hurt its own people. By taking that money, potentially being able to turn in that few $1 billion could turn into several $100 billion after giving out. By returning that money, the idea is to cripple the economy. And what these guys don't tell you is how many of their own people get crippled. Now, this next piece that I'm going to play is a doctor in red country trying to help these people. But because these people are being influenced by the evil that emanates from the Trump and his cabal, his enablers, his sycophants, they're killing themselves. I want you specifically, when you listen to this, to listen to those guys in the pickup truck. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to, if they were just coached a bit better by people they trust, they wouldn't put their own relatives in harm's way. They are probably going to be killing their elders. Check this out.
I traveled to this small rural town called Fredonia, the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and usually when there's a crisis, people come together and pitch in. But local doctor Jennifer McKenney told me that something is different this time. She is struggling and finding it hard to look forward to a vaccine when you can hardly get people to agree to wear masks. Take a look at what I saw in town.
Dr. Jennifer McKenney is one of only 5 doctors at the small regional hospital in Fredonia, Kansas.
In our new one, we can do high flow, invasive, bypass, everything.
That's right. Okay.
She's also the county's health official, responsible for planning the community's COVID response. Lately, it feels like an impossible job. 9 months after the first COVID case seen in Kansas, health officials like McKenney are losing support with residents who don't want to hear any more about masks and social distancing. Some drive by her house, post about her on Facebook, and push for her to get fired.
Hello. I'm giving you a big hug.
Dr. McKenney was born and raised here and says she knows almost every one of the town's 2,500 people. But now she sometimes feels like an outsider.
What do you think is motivating the tension in town?
I think there's a lot of fear and there's so much unknown. People want to blame something and they can't blame a virus that is too small to be seen. So they blame people like me.
At the end of November, she got a small win. After months of debate, town commissioners put a 30-day mask mandate in place. But at the meeting's end, the sheriff's deputy escorted Dr. McKenney out.
We are in the process of losing our freedoms. We're in the process of losing free speech.
That was a first for me. But when I asked them why they wanted to walk me out, they said, well, we're worried about your safety.
Disinformation and distrust of government, many depending on hourly wage jobs at the few restaurants and shops around, and fear being asked to quarantine. Their anger spills out onto administrators and contact tracers, like Destiny Wheeler.
We hear that this is a lot, and how are they going to pay their bills? And I know these people. I don't want them to not be able to pay their bills or not be able to go to work. And that does get really personal. It's very hard.
In the first 7 months of the pandemic, the community had 60 confirmed cases. In just the last week, they've seen 80.
My whole body's sore. It feels like I got hit with a vehicle. Lost a sense of taste and smell.
Are you worried at all?
I live with and take care of my 93-year-old great-grandmother, and that's something that I'm worried about.
Do you wish you'd worn a mask?
A little bit sometimes.
20 minutes later, both men got the call. They're COVID positive.
This is Harviette and Van.
Dr. McKenney says she'll keep showing up for her patients and working to combat pandemic fatigue.
Do you think that will solve the division in town?
I think it's going to take a while to solve the division in town because it's personal. It's hard. People have said things, people have heard things, and even if we're physically safe from the virus, there are a lot of hurt feelings. What I worry about is that it's going to take much longer to get through that than it would be to get through the actual pandemic itself with the virus.
So you think about that. You see those guys in the pickup truck. I am the sole I take care of my grandmother. I'm the one taking care of her. But I don't wear masks. And it's not encouraged. What do you think is going to happen to grandma? And the next question is, how is this guy going to feel after grandma dies? And after grandma dies, what psychological problems will this guy have when he knows that eventually that it's his pig-headedness by listening to Trump and his cabal, why he didn't take precautions to ensure he didn't get COVID, which eventually likely will kill his grandma? These are the things that these guys don't ask. But the question that you have to ask is, why are Trump and these guys so effective in having these guys listen to them and believe in them? Because deep inside in their hearts, they know that we, the progressives, are right. They know that. But it's that sixth sense that says, but they don't care about me. I want you to listen to David Brooks. A lot of what he says I agree with. A lot of my progressive brothers and sisters want to say, no, forget about those people because it is just a racist thing and it's only that. And whereas I always, you see, I look at racism as a tool, and I look at economics as the totality of everything, right? And I think that, listen to David Brooks and then we'll take it on the other side. Some people are going to dispute what he said. In fact, most in the black and brown intelligentsia completely disagrees with what David Brooks is going to say here. But check this out and we'll take it on the other side.
Let me read a little bit from your op-ed, which is why we invited you. It's called The Rotting of the Republican Mind. Under Trump, the Republican identity is defined not by a set of policy beliefs, but by a paranoid mindset. He and his media allies simply ignore the rules of the epistemic regime and have set up a rival trolling regime. The internet is an ideal medium for untested information to get around traditional gatekeepers, but it is an accelerant of the paranoia, not its source. Distrust and precarity caused by economic, cultural, and spiritual threat are the source. So you've diagnosed the illness. What's the prescription? How do we regain trust? How do we build back a society where everybody believes that it's the month of May when it's the month of May?
Right. Well, I think that the core problem is not the internet. A lot of people think, oh, it's the internet. But look at how much more Republicans are affected by conspiracy theories than Democrats. So it can't just be the internet. There must be some demand. And I think there are two core problems here. One is a lot of people in the expert class live in blue cities who are thriving. And then a lot of people left behind in the rural parts of America, they feel threatened economically, culturally, socially, and they have no contact with the expert class. So the thing to do, one, we those of us in the expert class or in journalism and academia have to do a better job of reaching out and post-Trump establishing relationships, showing some respect. Then there has to be economic policy so people don't feel threatened. The only way to cure distrust is through trustworthy relationships. It's by keeping promises to people who are unlike yourself. And it's been hard in the Trump era because it's become so bitter and acrimonious, but there's really no other way.
Now, in the black and brown intelligentsia, what they would say is that that's ridiculous, because we progressives are trying to give these guys financial stability, and the programs that we support are better for them, and Donald Trump and these guys are doing nothing right, but they'll still go for Donald Trump because they're just a whole bunch of damn racists. And you know, two things don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? They don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can be racist, and at the same time, they can do what they do. They can do what they do for economic reasons. And I always give that example. And this is where a lot of my thought process comes from, right? I always give that example of when Obama was running. And this person goes to this woman, to this family's house, the canvasser. They're going to the house. And things are bad in 2008. Terrible. Things are terrible. And the canvasser goes to the woman. I don't know why she had to ask the husband, but she says, Obama's canvasser goes, ma'am, who are you going to vote for? And the wife turns around and says, husband, who are we voting for? And he shouts out, we are voting for the N guy, the N-word guy, meaning this white racist couple was going to vote for Obama. Their personal economy had reached to the state where the faith that they had in the racial overtones that race in 2008 took, even that, for them to say, I won't vote for Barack Obama. What I'm trying to tell folks is these things are not mutually exclusive. And in my book, I gave several stories about talking to Daniel Boone's, the relatives of Daniel Boone here in Houston. You know, the Daniel Boone was a man, was a big. I spoke to these guys. I spoke to a lot of these guys in the Tea Party. And I explained that very well in the book. Yeah, some of these guys are racist and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? It goes beyond racism, right? Racism is the tool. Racism is the tool from the inception of this country. And we have to mitigate that. But when we sit on it all of the times, right? When we sit on it all of the time, we play into the domain of these people. What Barack Obama did, a lot of people talk about Barack's, the way he did that. What Barack Obama did, the way he calibrated his message, allowed that guy to say, I am going to vote for the N guy, even as I am a racist, because I see the ulterior goal. And what I try to tell my brothers and sisters on the left, right, is you're not asking anybody to love you. You're not asking anybody to like you. You don't even want to go break bread with you. You just realize that you need more than 50 plus 1. You need, if you want to get legislation that help us all, you have to make sure that your policies and the things that you want supersedes that guy's personal prejudices. They have to supersede so when somebody is racist against me, does it bother me? No. I have a daughter I love. I have my posse here at Politics Done Right that I love. I have all these. I have a big infrastructure, a big, huge village that I so love. I don't have to be loved in Appalachia to understand that Appalachia has a problem and to also want to fix Appalachia's problem, because knowing what I know, if I fix Appalachia's problem, my problems is fixed as well, are fixed as well. If I fix Appalachia's problems, some of the racist Appalachians who believe the word that is the other, that is making them or giving them the condition that they are, some of that will be mitigated. You see? Now, you're always going to have the supremacists. Hell, you have rich people that are all in the top 1%, that there's supremacy within the 1%, that this rich 1%er says, I don't like Oprah. She's a billionaire. I'm a billionaire, but I'm better just because I'm white. We can't solve all these internal problems. We can't. And one of the issues I have is by trying to solve some problems before others and saying we have to do this, sometimes we hurt the entire thing. Brother, let's see what I tell you what, let's see. The Republican David Brooks is talking about are the Republicans that use fomenting and supporting the same lazy thinking for years, for example, kept White in office. We need context. We need to keep history in mind. We always have to keep context. I agree with that. The Republican mind had been polluted by David Brooks for so long. He's accountable for the intelligentsia of the rich. Not only David Brooks. Let's look at some of the guys on the left as well. It's so important that we look at our left side. I go and I participate in a lot of these things on the left, right? Where all of us from the left meets, and I sit down there in the room and we are discussing issues. And it turns out the left, who is a great people, I'm one of 5 or 10 black people in there where we have 500 people. Why is that? I thought we were the people who really wants to solve problems. Look, humanity is humanity is humanity. We have to start solving things on an individual basis. So my take is this. I am not going to allow in my in my activism, I'm going to work with everybody. Hey, thank you, Brother Fleming, for ordering the book. In fact, I'm going to give my little thing a minute. I'm going to talk to everybody, people. I'm going to love everybody. And some people are going to hit me. And I'm going to come right back. Because I understand that it's the cancer that's been placed into this country. And I understand also that the only way to get rid and extricate that cancer is to break the cycle they hope we don't. And Trump almost brought us to the brink. Anyhow, folks, I got to go to the interview. But before I go to the interview, you know I got to have my little ask. So here's my ask. Please go ahead and get my book. I talk about some of this in my book. The title book, It's Worth It. It's Worth It. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors. Please get the book. By getting the book, you're helping us out. You're helping us out. You're helping us spread the message, and not only the left-wing message that is sometimes in itself rigid. I'm not doing equivalences here. Not equivalences here. But I'm just saying, sometimes flexibility, it's better to use the flexibility that we talk about. Secondly, if you want to cut out the middleman from my books, I have several books that you can get. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. This one, It's Worth It, and of course my weight loss book. You can go directly to our store, politicsdoneright.com/store. Politicsdoneright.com/store, and you can get t-shirts and all of that there. If you are on YouTube right now, please join our posse. Help us keep putting this message out. Click that join button, become a member now. Click that join button, become a member now, and also subscribe. If you're not on YouTube right now, you can get to YouTube by this link that I'm putting in here now. politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. You can become a part of our posse, clicking on that. And also, please remember to subscribe to the channel. Very important for us to keep growing this stuff out and out again. And don't forget, my brothers and sisters, we have a Patreon project, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, Patreon, Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. And of course, we accept PayPals as well. We'd love for you to do that. This is how we get this stuff done. You can't, this is how we do it. politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. Okay, I am done. Just one more time. Please join. Click that join button. Become a part of the posse. Now let's go ahead and talk to Stephanie J. Miller. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today we have a very special guest, part of a great series, Stephanie J. Miller. Stephanie J. Miller she founded Zero Waste in DC to focus on the application of zero waste strategies that have a real and sustainable impact. She has also authored the book, Zero Waste Living, the 80-20 Way. Think about that. With the goal of reaching as wide an audience as possible, she provides advisory services to individual households as well as community and corporate presentations within her 25-year career at the International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. She served as director of IFC's Climate Business Department, where she led global teams to find innovative solutions to climate change. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Great, Egberto. Thank you.
I'm going to ask a very first silly question. Is zero waste does it have more to do with politics or personal responsibility?
No one's asked me that before, but I really believe it's all about personal responsibility. So we can make anything about climate political, that's for sure. And unlike a recent guest, a fellow author, Paul O'Brien, who predicted the election results, I did not try to do that over the summer when I was writing this book. So no matter how the election would have come out, I'm glad we have what we have. We have some really promising things that are going to come out on climate at the government level, hopefully private sector as well. But regardless of all that, there is an element that I just think is so crucial, and that is the personal element. It doesn't excuse corporations, it doesn't excuse government. They have to be a huge part of the solution, but this doesn't have to be political. I think most Americans see we have to solve the climate crisis, And the cool thing is there's a lot we ourselves can do toward that end.
You will not imagine how happy I am that that's the way you responded. Because I strongly believe that we have to take responsibility not only for our own economy, not only for our own politics, but for our own well-being. And I think delegating that to others and not taking into consideration all of these things collectively is a great part of the problems that we have societal all completely. So I'm very happy that that is the way you responded to that question. Now, why? I know you're the founder of Zero Waste DC, so that name alone says much. But tell me, why did you write the book?
So I wrote the book because after 25 years working in an institution, the International Finance Corporation, the private sector part of the World Bank, where part of my job was to lead climate change. I mean, I had the job of leading climate efforts at the International Finance Corporation. So it was my job to help governments and private sector get on a more sustainable path. But I would come home and I realized I was sort of guilt-ridden, but I was paralyzed. I wasn't doing anything in my personal life to address my own waste and carbon footprint. And I ended up leaving the organization about 2 years ago. And the first thing I decided to do, I decided to take a little time off, take a gap year, as I called it. My son was heading off to college and I wanted to spend more time with him. But I decided I'd also try to finally tackle my own personal waste and carbon footprint and see what I could do about it. And what I realized is I didn't have to do everything perfectly to make a huge difference. And so I wrote the book for the people, and I think there are many of them, who feel they're too busy, like I was, too paralyzed, too guilt-ridden to take the steps that are easy. You don't have to become a climate activist to do a lot of things, and actually only a few things that make a really big difference. So that's why I wrote the book.
Your aha moment.
Yes, well, yes, and I'll tell you my little aha moment story if you want.
Yes, please do.
So about, I had been going to the dry cleaners because I'd go to work in my suits, and once or twice a week I'd go to the dry cleaners, and I always had this uncomfortable feeling. I'd bring home all my clothes and the plastic, and was just aware of all this plastic waste I was creating. I looked it up. 300 million pounds of that plastic from the dry cleaners ends up in the landfill every year. And so I'd always been meaning to ask my dry cleaner, would they be willing to put my clothes in my own reusable garment bag instead of, in the plastic? And don't ask me why it took me quitting my job to finally go in there bravely with my bag and say, could you please do this? And they said, no, not a big deal at all. So I said, okay. And then it's a bit of a long story, but I ended up pretty quickly, within a few weeks, convincing them to adopt a program to let other customers use reusable bags. And it took off within a very short period of time. You walk in now, and instead of seeing the sea of plastic, a third of their customers use these green reusable bags that they offer. And now you've got, the reusable bags with a bit of plastic, and it's great. So for me, that was an aha moment, that little old me could just ask this question, take it a little bit further and get this dry cleaners to adopt this program. And it made me think, aha, I've got a little more time on my hands now. What else could I do? So that was where it all started for me.
Well, I think you can remove the old out of that statement. You mean, you don't have to put that there, because I don't think the visuals correspond there. But here's the interesting thing. It's funny that you got that done at that dry cleaning place. And what that dry cleaner finally likely realized as well is it saved them a few bucks. Because now you have your customer bringing in something reusable. They no longer have to buy, they are only buying 67% of the plastics they were buying before. And now you've killed two birds with one stone. Well, that's a bad, you've killed two bad somethings with one stone. So I think that's more apt.
I'll just say that, sorry, unfortunately, those plastic wraps are so cheap that was not what really got them hooked. They very tentatively ordered 25 of these bags to offer their customers because they weren't sure they wanted to make the investment. What got them hooked, and it didn't take very long, is that apparently their customers started coming in and were very happy. And I think initially the owner, who's a very good businessman, was reluctant to do this, but when he saw how happy his customers were, he completely changed over. And then they ordered several hundred of these and the idea took off. So honestly, I think you're right. That's what my approach was. Oh, you'll save money. This would be good for you. I then looked up how cheap this plastic is, because it is, and it's cents, right? So it's, I think it's more in this case, the customer appreciation that really got them hooked.
Well, and that, even that is a good thing. I mean, who wouldn't be happy that they're doing something positive for the environment or for society in general? But even so, a happier customer is a customer that comes back, a customer that spends money. So ultimately, you're probably a positive on his bottom line anyway, in that he has a new advertising. I mean, it's sad that we have to always assign what is the other side of the benefit, just not knowing that clean air, a good environment, just those alone are, the financial benefits for that are incalculable. So
yeah, but they actually have customers who, when they found out they could get this there, they asked their own dry cleaners that wasn't President Valet, and that other dry cleaners nearby said no. So there are a few customers that have migrated over to this dry cleaners because of that. So I do think they're making more money as a result of that.
Right. So there you go.
It's a win-win.
Don't forget to send them your investment fee. Or not investment fee, your advising fee.
Yeah, no, they're wonderful. I'm just so glad they agreed to do this.
Well, that's a good thing. Now, you talk about it in your book, Food, how wasteful we are in food. Not only how wasteful we are in food, but I mean, how there are a lot of aspects to the way we eat that's very environmentally unfriendly. Why don't you tell us some of those, and what we, in your 80-20 rule, what little things we can do to mitigate that?
Yeah, so maybe I should first explain what the 80-20 rule is, because interesting, I wrote the book and then I started asking all my friends, do you know what the 80-20 rule? And some of them said, oh yeah, of course. And some of them, same families, some of them said, I have no idea what you're talking about. So the 80-20 rule is this thing we used to always talk about in my workplace, which is you really, not all actions are equal. You really only have to do the 20% most impactful things to make 80% of the difference, give or take. So, we used to say 80% of our business came from 20% of our clients, that sort of thing. So I decided to try to adopt this rule because I really didn't like the all or nothing. Zero waste is a bit of an intimidating concept. So the 20 approach worked for me. The food is, there are a few things, you don't have to do a whole lot. You don't have to become a vegetarian. So let's start first with what you eat. I was raised that, it's not a full meal if you don't have meat on the table. Unfortunately, I raised my son that way. This is dinner, and it's got 3 or 4 components. Meat is always one of them. So it was intimidating to me when my vegetarian friends would say to me, Stephanie, you care about the climate. The most important thing you could do, why don't you just quit meat? And I couldn't quite bring myself to do it. But what was really encouraging is that I realized I didn't have to make a huge difference. So again, getting back to the 80-20 idea, it's not black and white. It's not meat and vegetables. If you actually look at the carbon intent, and I'm not trying to make excuses because I really would like to go all vegetarian, and I'm moving in that direction, but so far I've got like 3 to 4 dinners a week I can safely say are vegetarian in our household. The thing is that if you look at meat and you look at vegetables on a chart in terms of carbon emissions, beef is way up there. Beef contributes to 60 kilograms of carbon emissions for 1 kilogram of beef.
Wow.
So, that's a decision. Mm-hmm. Under that, 10 times less than beef is chicken. So you don't have to go all the way down, and fish is half of chicken. of course, if you go to any of the vegetables and fruits, they're at the lower end of the spectrum. But my point is, and I say this to myself and to all my friends, is that, you know, every time you cook a meal, and of course during the pandemic, we're all eating more at home, unless we're getting takeout, you know, we're cooking a lot more. And there's an opportunity every single day at your very next meal to make a carbon wise choice. So you don't have to feel guilty if you have some meat. That's what I'm trying to say. So food, what you eat, hugely important. The other thing I would say around food that was the biggest surprise to me when I started doing this, looking at this a couple years ago, I worked in climate, right? But I was not aware that food waste was so significant. So if you look at all the things that could be done to reverse climate change, there's a set of scientists that came up with this great book, you know, 80 things, it's called Drawdown, 80 things you can do to reverse climate change. Number 3 on the list is food waste.
Wow.
And then you probably think, I did, that, okay, food waste, that happens at the farm, in distribution, transportation, restaurants, hotels. It does. But the most significant contributor to food waste is us. At the household level, we contribute the most. So that's an opportunity, right? And then I give some ideas in the book for what you can do to reduce food waste. For us, one of the things I do now that I wasn't doing before, and it's made a huge difference, is I do a 3-minute daily fridge review. And that means just making sure I have a shelf in the fridge that's labeled "Eat Me First." And my goal is I spend the 2 to 3 minutes a day, not a huge commitment, but I do it every day. And I try to bring forward all the food that's close to going bad. I try to put it in transparent glass containers so everyone can see what they should try to eat first. That has really reduced our food waste greatly. And the last thing I'll say about food is the joy of composting. So I'm not a gardener. I have a little backyard, but we were not composting. I thought that's what the green thumb friends of mine did. And I had no idea, again, I'm embarrassed to say this because I was focused on climate change, but when food ends up in the landfill, which all of our food waste did, instead of in a compost bin, you know, it's not exposed to oxygen. And therefore, the breakdown creates methane, which is a greenhouse gas so much more potent than CO2.
Yeah.
So, gosh, I mean, I wish that we had compost services for free here the way they have in Canada. We don't, but it is actually pretty easy to compost on your own. And then I don't think you're in the DC area, but in DC, we have all sorts of options. There are paid services, weekly pickups for $8 a week. The city of DC also offers drop-off compost at many farmers markets in most neighborhoods. So there's a lot of options. And I think if there's one thing I'd change about the US waste system, it would be encouraging more composting at the municipal level.
So when you talk about DC having compost, you're talking about they'll pick up food for composting, or do they also have a delivery service to farmers for compost that they've made? How does it work?
So you can pay a private company. I did this for a while before I got brave enough to try it on my own. It's really not hard, but I did this initially. I paid a private company to come pick up my compost, my vegetable and fruit scraps, and also bread and rice if you had that left over. And they would do that. What DC offers is a drop-off service. So you can collect your bin for a week's worth of vegetable scraps and bring it to, say, a nearby farmer's market. And they will do the same thing that private service was doing for me, which is they'll collect it, they'll industrially compost it, and then they'll use it for planting. It's a good question. Where does that compost end up? Who do they give it to? I don't know the answer to that, but I will check on that. But it gets used. So and it's in demand. So it's a great.
Now, do you use your own compost for growing at all?
I do now. So one of the other things I started doing, we all have our pandemic projects, right? So mine was we started growing tomatoes and we started growing herbs. So I use the compost for that. And it's fun. I mean, I will tell you, besides the 2-minute fridge review, 3-minute fridge review I've recommended, we immediately saw a drop in our volume of garbage every week.
Yeah, of course.
As soon as we started doing
Now, what about
the
the volume of
composting.
dirt that you have in the backyard now?
It's not huge. It's a little miracle. You put this stuff in, you turn it every once in a while. Nature does its thing, you know, a little bit of water, air, and heat. And right now in the winter, it's slow. It doesn't produce the compost soil as quickly, but it's there. It doesn't
It gets
take up
warm, right? The activity, I think that generates some heat on its own, right?
It does, but certainly the summer and spring
It's a
things
lot fast.
happen a lot faster
And
in
you
that
don't put meat
compost
in
pile.
compost, is that right?
Yeah, so that's a great and important question. If you're composting at home and you live in an urban environment, you probably don't want to put meat in there because it's home composting, unlike industrial composting. Industrial, the heat, they have systems that create a lot of heat, and so you don't have to worry so much about some of the food items you put in. I would have rats if I put
right.
meat here. There are some services that will take meat as one of the things they'll pick up for you, and there are others that won't. So it just depends on the service you use. But they have to end up having a system that can deal with meat.
Okay, let's talk plastics.
Yeah. So plastics for me is an eye-opening thing. You know, I changed my glasses one day. This is what it felt like. And all of a sudden, I saw plastic all around me. We are in such a convenience culture. Plastic, and here I mean single-use plastic, right? So I don't mean the stuff that's sitting around your house that is permanent, but I mean the plastic water bottle, the takeout
Plastic
containers,
bag, the plastic containers,
plastic
that's one
bags.
use, yeah.
Yeah, we touch it for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, maybe we put it in the fridge for a little while, and then it's it's usually improperly recycled, but let's say we get it right. Even when you recycle plastic, and only about 9% of plastic has ever been recycled in the US. So it's, really not significant. It's important to get it right. Recycling, is we can talk about, is key, but plastic waste is huge. It's growing. The plastics industry during the pandemic has made it a cause, I think, for them to associate safety with plastic. It's not true. In fact, 125 scientists came out in June, epidemiologists, immunologists, and said, no, it's not true. You can be just as safe from the pandemic using reusables instead of single-use plastic. You just have to do the same thing we're all doing, which is hygiene, hand washing in between. So the plastic thing for me was about having my eyes open. And the recommendation I make to people is, I can't tell you what is your single biggest use of reusable plastic, but chances are there's one thing or just a handful of things that you buy every day, at least I did, and you just don't think about it. For me, it was my water bottle. Back when I was going to work, I was buying a couple bottles of water a day in single-use plastic. So I ended up, when I embarked on this journey, I ended up buying one of those cool stainless steel, swell bottles, really cool. And I brought my bottle with me everywhere I went. And if I forgot it, I went thirsty. But what it did was, it opened my eyes to the fact that I was a huge contributor to the single-use plastics problem. And once you do that, then you start to think of, oh, what else could I do differently? Because there's so many swaps you can make. Again, I could probably spend 3 hours just talking about all the hacks, all the swaps. But the key thing is knowing what in your life are you contributing to that you could, in fact, eliminate completely.
Let me get on top of that, even sticking with the plastic, because I'm guilty as hell. I like those small Ziploc bags to put away a whole lot of food in single serving bags and throw it in the freezer, and then you can then take it out and warm it up, and 3 pieces and you're done with a meal. right? Are there Ziploc replacements that are biodegradable that we can be looking into right now? Still throwaway, but biodegradable? Or do we have to stay with the containers that we reuse and wash?
So first of all, if you use one of those Ziploc bags again and again and again, then you are reusing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. I mean, I don't think we should guilt. One of my biggest things is let's stop with the shaming game, and let's make sure if most people want to do the right thing, so let's point them in the right direction in a nice way. If you're reusing your bag, I have a friend who reuses those Ziploc bags for years. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm not into suggesting you go and buy a whole bunch of zero waste products if you don't need them. There are substitutes. There are silicone Ziploc bags. I have some beeswax bags I use. They're not as versatile, I'll admit, as the plastic, but for some things they're perfectly fine. My fiance and I have an argument most weeks about, for this, I'm going to use the Ziploc bag. And so we have a few in the house, but there are really good substitutes. I just don't think anyone should be ashamed of using Ziploc bags as long as they're not using it once and then getting rid of it.
Excellent. We're going to have to kind of run a little bit here and say recycle right. What does that mean?
So we in the US are terrible at recycling in all sorts of ways. We're terrible. We have a terrible recycling rate. It's been at the same level, about 35% for decades. We contaminate. That means we put things in the bin that don't belong there, and they make the rest of the stuff in the bin non-recyclable, especially food. Please, one thing I would say to anyone who's still putting plastic bags in your recycle bin, don't. They're dangerous for the workers at these recycling facilities. They're not recyclable at these facilities. They are recyclable if you bring them back to the grocery store. There's some partnerships. The thing I recommend in the book is to do an audit, which sounds really boring, but it's actually kind of fun. You only have to do it once, maybe twice, where you take a look at what's in there and you make sure you just Google recycling rules near me, make sure that you're putting the stuff in that belongs there. And then it's a great opportunity when you do this audit to figure out what could you actually be reducing. If you see a bunch of plastic carbonated water bottles, could you instead use a different container, or could you get one of those soda streams so you're not using the bottles, that sort of thing.
Now, beyond the individual, we started the conversation with personal responsibility, which I think was the perfect thing to do. Beyond the individual, is that activism? Is that trying to get your politicians to do what they need to do?
So certainly at the political level, but here I mean influencing your local representatives, ask why don't we have composting service yet? Try to support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. Those things are good to do. For those of us who are busy, what I say is you don't realize how much influence you already have in your community, your friends, your family. Huge amount of the most exciting thing when I was writing this book is realizing the social norms that we can set. Greta Thunberg did an interview recently where she talked about, they did this study where they tried to get people to reduce their energy consumption, and they told them, do it for the environment, do it for your future, do it to save money. The thing that convinced people the most to reduce their energy consumption, you'll never guess what it was.
What was it?
It was, here is how you compare with your neighbors on energy consumption.
Interesting. Competition.
We care. We are such social animals. We care about what other people are doing. And so to me, the most exciting thing is to realize if you embark on this journey, you can influence beyond your own household. You have a huge social media, lots of ways to tell your friends, family, and everyone who follows you what you're doing. And they will start realizing, aha, that might be something I want to try as well.
Well, Stephanie, what should I have asked you, or what would you have wanted me to ask you that I didn't?
I think you covered everything really well. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I spring that question on everybody at the end.
I know. I watch your interviews. I know you do, and I was ready to make sure that you asked me about influence because it's so exciting. But you did. So I think we covered a lot. There's a lot people can do. I think the message that I would most want people to know is that I was paralyzed 2 years ago, most of my career. You don't have to be paralyzed. You can do so much. You don't have to do it perfectly, but embarking on making a few decisions about what you're going to do differently, you can feel very confident you are lowering your impact, both on the waste side and on the carbon side.
Stephanie J. Miller, founder of Zero Waste in DC and author of Zero Waste Living, the 80-20 Way. You'll find the links to the book in our blog post as well as elsewhere. It's been my pleasure to have you on board Politics Done Right. Thank you so kindly for having been here.
Thank you so much, Egberto. Great to be here.
Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me go ahead and do what I must do. Welcome everybody aboard. Linda E., welcome aboard. Brige MCP, welcome aboard. Para ver. Who else is here? Michael Rudnan, of course. Sorry about that. Let's see. Paul Fleming. Remember, Paul Fleming just went ahead and got a copy of It's Worth It, and I got it in, and I'll ship it out for you today, Paul Fleming. Let's see who else is here. I got Brige already. I got Rudnan. You guys had a great conversation going here. That's why I love the place. The chat's going very good. Let me see. AVQ, welcome aboard. I saw a lot more up top. Maybe some people. Squeedo became our latest member of the YouTube posse. So, folks, join Squeedo. Go ahead and click on that join button and become a member of our team, our Facebook posse. According to Brige, our PDR posse. And if you're not on YouTube, I just put the link in there that you can join that PDU posse. Okay, continuing with bringing all our folks in. Let's see who else is here. I got Paul already, and oh, my eyes are going crazy. I got Squeedo. And going Norman Reynolds, my brother. Hey, let's see. Linda Jo Kissinger, welcome aboard. Kinsinger, sorry for messing up your name. And of course, there is coming up. Let's see, Linda Jo. Just got you. Dave Earnhardt, welcome aboard. And it's a lot of messages, so sometimes I go and I pass it by mistake. So forgive me if I do, and just add it to the bottom of the list. And I'll go AVQ. I'll go ahead and call you out. Oh my eyes. Okay, I'm going to go to the bottom of the list because I think my eyes are starting to go crazy. Anyhow, look, guys, thank you so kindly for being here. I know you have places that you can be, and you're still here with me. So, more than anything else, I enjoy what we're doing. We are going to make a difference. You are going to make a difference. Everything that we do here, whether you understand it, believe it, or not, let me tell you, we make a difference. Brige says, you have a good interview, and the PDR posse takes off. I love that, Brige MCP. So click that join button. Join the PDR posse. See you guys on Monday. Let me tell you, I have an interview that I have stacked up with, remember those guys that I did the what is it called? The comedian thing? I was the interviewer this time. So that should be a lot of fun. And there's a story there you guys are going to love in that thing. Anyway, my name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.